Hello everyone and welcome back to the Emperor BTC channel. Today's video is going to be an altcoin market update video. We'll take a quick look at ETH and Solana and then we'll dive into some of your suggestions. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So let's start off with ETH, and what we'll do in this video is we'll try and stay on the higher time frames like the daily or the weekly, just so this video isn't 2 hours long. And if we start with ETH, again, to avoid a lot of regurgitation from previous videos, we have this kind of wider range, similar to BTC, where you have support down in this region where there's multiple taps and kind of a range low at this point. Of course, we have a range high up here where there's been multiple taps of this resistance range. We then, of course, had a deviation, got this underside retest, deviated outside, came back up, flipped back onto the level, and then pushed up, of course, into a nice rally. We then came up, had a small reaction at the resistance level, dropped down, small retracement in the grand scheme of things, and then we smashed up through this resistance level, which was nearly a year long at the time. And now, of course, in hindsight, we've had an SFP of the previous all-time high. We had kind of this consolidation above range highs, which now, again, with hindsight, is quite obviously a distribution range where long-term investors will look to offset some of their positions with lower time frame traders being chopped up back and forth in this range, and it's essentially just an efficient market play for distribution. We did have a minor retest and flip of this level, similar to this one here, which at the time we caught a couple of nice scalps in and around this region, and then we had some resistance in this area which we knew to take some profits on them positions. We then had quite a sharp drop across the board, similar to BTC, where we came down and had a slight SFP, and then in our previous video we were highlighting this light grey area, which is a lower time frame key SNR zone, which acted as resistance on two key pivotal moments when we did try and break back up for a bearish underside retest. We've then dropped down now after kind of having a similar range, quite tight in it. Of course, we've put in now a couple of lower lows and we're in and around that 3K region. So now if we start looking for possible pivot points for ETH from a volume perspective, we've got a litter of negative points to control in and around this lower half region of 2K800 to all the way down to about 2K, including the wider range point of control. We also have this low volume node right in the middle here, in and around this mid-range key SNR zone. So if I just knock off the negative point of controls for now, so you see this low volume node over here, not too much volume traded in this region, but it's been quite pivotable. So you've got support in this region, and then of course flipped into resistance, then flipped into support just kind of in this region. It could be extended into it. Then we have bearish retest inside it again in this instance, and then kind of a minor flipping of the level. So in and around this region is probably an area where you could start to see some sort of reaction if we were to drop down here without, too much chaotic news. And then vice versa, from a short perspective, I think this region here is going to be quite a strong resistance level. Even if we were to bounce and get some relief, I think a lot of shorts would enter this market and a lot of profit taken would occur, which would then of course lead to a natural sell-off. And finally, from an accumulation standpoint on Ethereum, if we simply take our tool, we are down about 40% at the low, and we're not too far off the low now. We're about 33% from the high at the moment. And of course, things could get worse before they get better, especially under current market conditions. But anything in and around this 40% discount range, all the way down, of course, to 72%, I think is a decent discounted price for maybe some dollar cost averaging or some steady accumulation. Again, I hope a lot of you can see in this cycle that BTC was quite a sensible asset to hold against a lot of alts who are probably down on the year in general, given that it was a bull market supposedly. And BTC, of course, yes, it's down, but it's not down as drastically or as violently. So I hope that causes a lot of people to maybe reevaluate their strategy when it comes to crypto. But with a token like ETH, given its just sheer size and adoption as of the moment, I think accumulation in this region long term would not be a terrible idea. And of course, if we look at the weekly, I think this region, this KSNR zone down here is, of course, would be the ideal scenario. But I guess accumulation and some DCA could occur in this region, just given if we take our fib tool and we look at price again from a discount perspective, it's also in and around that 618 level, and then this area, of course, the key SNR zone. So there's potentially some value in this region. Moving on to Solana, and I won't go through everything because again, a lot of this is regurgitation, especially on the higher time frame. So we've had this high put in around this key higher time frame level. We failed to make new all-time highs on Solana, but as far as I'm aware, from a market cap perspective, it did make new all-time highs. It's just simply an inflation in tokenomics, which caused it to fail making a new high from a token perspective. We've come up, we've got this bearish retest of this kind of supply zone. Of course, quite had a sharp nuke, and then this usual dead cat bounce back in around this mid-range point of this lower time frame range. And of course, just kind of front running this range high. I'm sure if we put a fixed range volume profile in around this lower time frame range, it's probably a value area high in around this region alongside this resistance level. So we then have this key SNR zone, which has been doing its best to hold. You can see even the bodies of the candle were really trying hard to stay intact. But on Monday, we had quite a sharp nuke through it. And now we have taken out the low here. And I think just given the structure of price, I do think that this low in around that 95 region is probably on the cards, maybe not immediately. Although, of course, in crypto, things do like to move quite quickly, specifically to the downside, as well as the upside. But you have this low here, which coincides with quite a nice key SNR zone, especially from a hard time frame perspective, where of course you can see here we have the resistance, the support, and then kind of the support and then deviation outside of it, which of course created this low, similar to, of course, Ethereum's price action from a fractal perspective. And then, of course, if you zoom way over here, you get support, resistance, and then this kind of FTX-induced bear market. Do I think that Solana will go this low? Never say never. And I mean, it's already pretty low, and if BTC is to move down towards the 63k region, which if you watched our video on Tuesday is not off the cards, and I think I'd quite openly admit that I would love that to happen for me personally, to accumulate some BTC in that region. And if that was to occur, I personally wouldn't look for accumulation of Solana in this region until I start to see maybe BTC is moving in a better direction, even though this probably would be a really nice level to maybe look for some scalp longs. But me personally, I won't be looking for that. But just for anyone who, of course, has asked me to check out the Solana chart, this would be a region that you could potentially see some sort of volume entering in on the long side of the market. So moving on to your guys' suggestions, and as always, you guys are the best and always come through with an abundance of suggestions and asking requests. This is just half of what I get request wise, and I really appreciate it. So thank you all. So democratically, we're going to try and pick the tokens that I see appearing the most. Of course, a lot of people have asked for ETH and Solana, which we will always cover in these videos, just given that they are probably two of the biggest altcoins besides BTC. So just going by the comment section, we're going to take a look at SU, ENA, and Link. So before we go any further, again, I'm just covering suggestions here. None of the things I say here are financial advice and should be taken with a pinch of salt. So if we start off with Link and we look at the weekly time frame, I think I might have had a look at Link on a previous video. So we just remove some of the immediate levels and we look at maybe some higher time frame levels. I believe on October 6th, the week starting on October 6th was the Trump tariff announcement. So I think we're going to see a recurring theme across a lot of these, medium cap to low cap altcoins, even some of the high caps, of course, where there was a huge, flush out on this, higher time frame. For something like Link, I think keeping it simple from a hard time frame perspective, that the best level to maybe look for some sort of accumulation for a value bet is probably in and around this key SNR zone, because you have this long accumulation phase between about just under $10 all the way down to about $5. And then of course it broke up from that and you got a couple of retests in that region, in and around it. And of course in and around this wick, you can see it got bid quite quickly. So for me personally, for the simple reason being that I would rather accumulate stronger assets. For the likes of altcoins, it needs to be a really good high value play from an accumulation standpoint. So I think if we get back into this region, it would probably be the best case scenario to maybe look for some long-term longs back towards maybe 22 for a nice spot play, which of course could play out over a couple of years. Do I think if we drop down to the daily, we can see we have these relatively equal lows, which got taken out. But with a wick like this, it tends to leave quite a significant inefficiency in the marketplace. So that's where the saying comes about, fill in the wick. I do think that there's the possibility that on all altcoins that of course didn't have too drastic of a dump, which they all did, but they didn't go to zero. I think it got baited up quite quickly. We got the bearish retest of this supply zone before the nuke, relative equal lows taken out into the supply zone. I think if we were to continue trickling down with the bearish order flow as it is, this may be the area where you start to potentially look for a base. If not, and we were to fall through and get a bearish retest, all of a sudden you find yourself back in this accumulation range, which lasted for a long time, from about May 2022 to October 2023 when the breakout occurred. Moving on to SU, you have this key SR zone. This is not a token I've looked at a whole lot, so this is kind of my first time. And then I guess you have this region as another key SNR zone, and then you can see that this was acting as a supply zone on these bounces. So resistance, SFP of this, I guess, initial launch in 2023, SFP of that, drop back down to this base, then push up, slight SFP, little retracement, breakout into price discovery, got a couple of legs, final leg here, drop back down, found support here, came back up, bearish retest of supply, dropped down, found support again in this region. This is, I guess, a flipping of this level, and then with the breakout this became demand in this down close candle. Then you get the bounce, so you have an SFP of this high paired with this supply zone, which is this wider region, multiple tests, and then you can start to see it slowly trickling down, and then the big flush out that is crazy. What is that? 80% in one candle. Oh, God. This is why I cannot be playing too much with altcoins, and why you will very rarely see me talking a whole lot of confidence with altcoins. Even when I do, it's should be taken with a pinch of salt, and assuming that I'm not actually entering in with any sort of size. A lot of it is just kind of on an alt account, because sometimes there are decent plays, but a lot of altcoins is timing. So alts tend to have a life cycle, like most, I guess, stocks and businesses, but alts definitely more vicious, where they really, a lot of them don't come back. Like five years ago, there was a different abundance of tokens that were, I guess, mainstream. They've all died. Now there's a new wave in, then they'll all die, and then a new wave will come in, then they'll all die again. So what I would say is absolutely do not marry these bags, because the founders will absolutely be selling the token on the way up. They will be selling in these regions, and I would find it very surprising if they were actively trying to support the price on this token, or if they even have the capabilities to do so. I see if we drop down through this key SNR zone and come back up and get a bearish retest, It may even be a nice opportunity to look for some shorts down back towards this region. If I was personally looking for longs on a token like this, it would not be anywhere before this region. I may be wrong. I'm sure someone will call me out on it if I'm wrong in the future, where it ends up bouncing up here and going to $100. But for me personally, this is a low probability bet until about this region, where then, okay, if we were to get into this region, you're in and around the range lows from these price points. So a bounce back to range highs would be a nice, I guess, nearly 4x. And finally, to finish off today's video, we will go through your suggestions, which was ENA. So this is the weekly chart. It doesn't look fantastic given that this candle is in around that 12-cent region. And one thing I would like to bring to people's attention when it comes to altcoins is that, okay, you can buy at 30 cents, okay, and it looks like a really nice bet. But if Bitcoin was to say, again, hypothetically, nuke to a 60k region, this could lose 90% of its value. You know, like, just because it's at 30 cents and the price is already down, you know, let's say from this local high, it's already down 65%. So you start to think, well, you know, it's not that bad of a region, which it isn't. I'm not saying it is. But if we were to take our tool and to say, okay, well, if we were to buy here and price was to go and fill in the wick, it's still another 60%. So if you were to buy $1,000, you would lose $580 on your investment. Not fantastic. Of course, on the flip side, if it was to go up, you would make 189%, which would make you a genius in hindsight. But then it becomes about value bets. What is the catalyst for this token bouncing and making a move like that? I don't think there is anything. We have this, I guess, bearish retest of this supply zone, which was the last run up that failed to take out this high. Then we have the SFP of this lower time frame high. Drop down. This was another insane nuke, which I actually can't believe sometimes I'm looking at with some of these tokens. There was, of course, a nice value bet maybe on this bounce, where you kind of get this, I guess, similar dead cat bounce after this nuke, when we found value in and around this base. And now we are coming back into it, and I guess this low probably becomes a target. Then you probably come up, maybe get a bearish retest, and then maybe come back down into this region. So, you know, I really think this is doesn't look that great. And again, from an investment standpoint, there's probably better places to put your money. So that's all for the altcoin mark update video. Again, these are just my thoughts on these tokens. I might be completely wrong, I might be completely right, but don't take it as financial advice. So thank you very much. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below on your thoughts on the market at the moment. Are you looking to accumulate? Are you looking to hold off? Do you disagree with any of my thoughts in this video? Let me know. I'm always open to hear, and always like reading the comments and some of the nice messages you guys send in, so I really appreciate it. I'll be back on Tuesday with a BTC market update video, where we'll also cover the DXY like we did a couple of weeks ago. So make sure you tune in for that one. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.